Hello and welcome. This is Angie with thecountrysweetcottage.net. So today we are going to talk about cutting wood with our Cricut Maker. So whether you are new to the Cricut Maker or new to the knife blade itself, you'll want to watch this video all about cutting wood with your machine. Now, only the Cricut Maker can cut wood. So if you have a Cricut Explorer, any of the Cricut Explorer series or any of the older models, you won't actually be able to cut wood. But you might enjoy watching the video, seeing what you can do with the Maker, and it might entice you to upgrade one of these days. We're going to use the knife blade and the Cricut Maker to cut some basswood. We're actually going to cut some shapes like this, and then the outside was cut with the Maker as well. So let's get started. Let's head to the craft room and look at the types of wood we can cut, and then we'll cut this piece. So let's talk about the types of wood that you can cut with your Maker. So you can cut basswood, and basswood actually Cricut makes it in an 11 by 11 sheet as well as a 12 by 6 sheet. Now these sheets cut great on the Maker, but you can also find basswood at your local craft store. However, see how these sheets are perfectly sized to fit on the Cricut mat? The sheets that come from your local craft store will be really odd sizes. So you actually cut 1/16 inch basswood and 1/32 inch basswood. The basswood from Cricut is the thicker version, but you can get both thicknesses at your craft store. You can also buy balsa wood at your craft store, and the Maker will cut it as well. The balsa is not as strong of a wood, so I wouldn't recommend it for a ton of projects. So now that we have our wood pieces, let's look at adding those to our mat. So you will need a strong grip cutting mat, which is the purple mat, and then you'll need your piece of basswood. Now if you have one of the long pieces from the craft store, you may need to cut it down to fit your mat well. And then you want to press it down really well. You can even use something like a brayer to make sure it's down and stuck on the mat really well. And then as extra insurance, because we do not want this to move, you just want to use some masking tape. So this is just regular plain masking tape, and we want to tape it in a few areas. The corners especially. Sometimes I tape it about halfway, especially on these larger sheets. And you just want to keep it not within the cutting area. So the cutting area is about ½ inch in. So the most you can cut size-wise with the Maker is with basswood is 11 inches, because your star wheels will run along this area right here, so you don't want any wood in that area. And then within that, you'll be about ½ inch in from each edge where the maximum cutting space will be. So we'll just add some tape, and now we're ready to head to the Maker and cut some wood. What will you need to cut the wood? You will need a knife blade. So if you've not seen the knife blade before, we have a whole video on the knife blade itself, but it is basically like a craft knife for your cutting machine. And so let's take the knife blade as well as the mat to our Maker and start cutting our wood. So one thing to note about the Cricut Maker and the knife blade only works with a computer. It will not work on mobile. So if you're trying to use it with your tablet or your phone, it will not work. So when you're using the knife blade, get out your computer to do all your cuts. And that is because they don't want you to lose connection, but because the cuts can take quite a while.
So when cutting wood, the cuts against the mat will be cleaner than the cuts on top. So what you can do is actually mirror your cut. And then when you peel it off the mat, the good side will actually be the side that's against the mat. So when you're putting your wood on your mat, be sure to look at any imperfections that are on the wood and place those face up, with the good side being face down.
So you'll want to use the knife blade and add it to the tool holder. And then the star wheels that are on the bar, you want to move those all the way to the right hand side, all 4 of them. So once you load your mat into your Cricut machine, it will start to cut. Now, it will tell you how many passes it has left, and after the first pass, it will actually tell you how much time is left. Cutting with the Cricut Maker and the knife blade on wood is actually a pretty long process. It takes quite a while. So be prepared to sit there and watch your machine and make sure that the cut doesn't mess up, and make sure you don't have to stop the cut. So just pay attention to your machine as it cuts. about halfway through, pause the cut occasionally, and then check to see if the cuts are all the way through. And you can use something like a weeding tool and try to pick up the edge of your piece and see if it's cut all the way through. Now be sure to check things like tight corners, as they'll be the last to cut. So this one needs cut a few more times. Then once you've cut your piece, you just remove it from the mat. Now, if there's any cuts that don't go all the way through just quite, so maybe most of the cuts were all the way through, it's starting to dig into your mat, but maybe the corner here is not completely cut, you can just bring it up to your craft room. Use a protection on your surface of some type, like a self-adhesive mat, cutting mat or something like that, and then just use a craft knife and kind of get in those areas to finish the cut in the corners or something like that. And that's if you want to get the maximum life and extend it out of your mat. If you don't care about the mat, you can absolutely just run this through another pass on the Maker and let it cut all of the cuts all the way through. So it's super easy to cut wood with your Cricut Maker. Now let's talk a little bit about the projects that you want to use. So you want to use something that's fairly simple. So intricate cuts will not work as well. So try to keep your turns and your radiuses to a minimum when you're dealing with the knife blade. So you might design something you might have a ton of trouble with it cutting or with it not cutting, getting stuck, that type of thing. Then your design might be a little bit too intricate. So try opening up those turns and then trying to cut again. Now, if your blade does get stuck, what you'll need to do is just restart it with the C button on your machine and kind of blow out around the cut, and then you can even use something like a weeding tool to kind of drag wherever it was stuck in the cut line, and that'll clean out any debris in that cut line as well. So I hope you enjoyed this video about cutting wood. If you did, be sure to give us a thumbs up. You might want to head on over to our YouTube channel and subscribe, because we have Cricut videos like this all the time and you don't want to miss any of those. While you're there, scroll back, you might find a few videos you like as well. So thank y'all so much for joining me today. If you have any questions about anything we've talked about today, any questions about cutting wood with your Cricut Maker and the knife blade, please ask them in the comment section below. Thanks y'all. Bye-bye.